My name is Natalie Whitaker. At 34, I lived a lie, believing our family home was a sanctuary built on love. My parents always said, "This home belongs to the people who love it, not the loudest." I believed it, even as my high-stakes career kept me away, fueling a quiet guilt. This Christmas, my brother, beaming like a victor, announced, "Mom and Dad are signing the house to me. Natalie gets nothing." The room cheered. Cousins clapped. My mother's hand trembled. My father stared into his wine. My brother, still smiling, expected my defeat. I placed my napkin down, met my mother's eyes, and asked, "Mom, should I tell them or will you?" Her fork clattered. His face went white. The truth? A forged signature, secret debt, and a power of attorney signed while Mom was hospitalized. Everything I knew, shattered in one brutal weekend. He still thought he'd won. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if this story truly resonates with you. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. Christmas dinner and the announcement. My name is Natalie Whitaker. I was 34 years old when my brother tried to steal my parents' home in front of an entire Christmas table and expected me to clap for him. 10 seconds before he said it, I was staring at the old brass ornament shaped like a little house, the same one my parents used to hang every December while telling me, "This home belongs to the people who love it, not the loudest person in the room." I had believed that sentence my whole life. I believed it when I left Vermont to become a senior aviation safety investigator in Seattle. I believed it when I missed birthdays, snowstorms, and Sunday dinners because my job sent me to crash sites and courtrooms. I believed it when guilt sat beside me on every plane ride home. Then my brother stood at the head of the Christmas table, lifted his glass, and smiled like a man accepting an award. "Mom and Dad are signing the house to me," he said. "Natalie gets nothing. She has her big career. She doesn't need it." The room burst into cheers. Aunts smiled. Cousins clapped. Someone said, "That's fair." He stayed. I felt every pair of eyes slide past me like I had already been erased from the family portrait. My mother's hand trembled beside her plate. My father stared into his wine glass, and my brother kept smiling, waiting for me to crack. I didn't. I placed my napkin down, looked straight at my mother, and said, "Mom, should I tell them or will you?" Her fork hit the plate so hard the sound cut through the room. My brother's face went white. "Tell us what?" he screamed. "Before I tell you what he said next and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel." The porch conversation and the first crack in the lie. No one moved after my question. The Christmas lights reflected in the windows, making the whole dining room look warm from the outside. But inside, it felt like someone had opened a freezer door. My brother's smile disappeared first. Then my mother lowered her eyes. That was the moment I knew this was not a misunderstanding. This was a secret. My father cleared his throat and said, "Natalie, maybe we should talk later." My brother jumped in too fast. "No, she wanted attention, so let her have it." "Tell them what, Natalie?" His voice had that sharp edge I remembered from childhood. The one he used whenever he broke something and convinced everyone I had touched it last. I almost answered him right there, but my mother looked so fragile that I swallowed the truth. "Not here," I said. "Not with everyone cheering for something they don't understand." I stood up, walked past the table, and heard whispers follow me into the hallway. Outside on the porch, the cold Vermont air hit my face like a slap. I gripped the railing and tried to steady my breathing. I was furious, but beneath the anger was something worse. Loneliness. I had flown across the country thinking I was coming home for Christmas. Instead, I had walked into my own replacement ceremony. A few minutes later, the porch door opened. My father stepped out wearing his old cardigan, the one with a burn mark on the sleeve from a fireplace accident 20 years ago. "You embarrassed your brother," he said quietly. That hurt more than shouting would have. "Did I?" I asked. "Or did he embarrass all of us by announcing a transfer you and Mom never discussed with me?" My father rubbed his forehead. "David has been here. You haven't." He drives your mother to appointments. He checks the furnace. He handles the bills. That's what he told you? I asked that he handles the bills. My father's jaw tightened. Don't make this about jealousy, Natalie. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, but because the accusation was so perfectly planted. He told you that, didn't he? That I'd be jealous. That I'd come home acting superior. That my job made me think I was better than everyone. My father didn't answer, which was answer enough. I looked toward the dark line of pine trees beyond the driveway and forced myself not to cry. Dad, do you remember when I was 26 and David borrowed $9,000 from Grandma's account after she died? My father froze. That was a paperwork error. No, it wasn't. He blamed me because I was the one helping with the estate forms. I kept quiet because Mom begged me not to ruin Thanksgiving. I paid the money back myself. My father's face shifted, not fully believing me, but no longer dismissing me either. Why are you bringing this up now? He asked. Because this isn't the first time David has used family love as camouflage. The porch door creaked behind us. I glanced back and saw my mother in the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall. Her skin looked pale, almost gray. My father followed my gaze, and fear crossed his face. Your mother's condition has been worse than she told you, he whispered. David said stress could trigger another episode. He said we shouldn't upset her with legal arguments. That was the twist I hadn't expected. My mother had a heart rhythm disorder, but she had always been honest with me about her health. Now David had turned her illness into a locked door. Dad, I said slowly, who told you not to call me about her appointments? He looked away. David said you were too busy. He said you'd only panic. Something inside me went cold and clean. I'm not going to fight him at the dinner table, I said. Not tonight, but I'm going to find out exactly what he's done. My father whispered, Natalie, be careful. I opened the porch door and looked back at him. Careful is what got us here. Natalie investigates and discovers the power of attorney. The next morning, I did what I had been trained to do in aviation investigations. I stopped reacting and started building a timeline. Planes rarely fall from the sky because of one mistake. Families don't collapse because of one speech at Christmas dinner. There is always a chain of decisions, small failures, ignored warnings, and people who benefit from confusion. My brother had counted on emotion. I chose evidence. I told everyone I was staying a few extra days to help pack away decorations. Then I offered to help David clean out the mudroom and garage because he had been complaining about doing everything alone. He loved that. He wanted an audience for his martyr act. See, he told our aunt on speakerphone while I carried boxes. Natalie finally remembered. She is parents. I smiled, lifted another box and watched. David kept his phone face down. He took calls outside. He used banking apps while standing with his back to the wall. He guarded his laptop like it contained state secrets. That afternoon, while he was in the garage arguing with someone about margin calls and extension fees, his phone buzzed on the kitchen island. The screen lit up with a bank notification before going dark. I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to. The notification preview said, transfer failed. Insufficient funds. Whitaker Home Equity Reserve. My stomach dropped. My parents had a home equity line. Nobody had told me. That night, I called my old college roommate Marissa Reed, who worked in digital fraud compliance for a credit union in Denver. I didn't ask her to hack anything. I asked her what legal signs to look for if an elderly parent was being financially manipulated. She gave me a checklist. New authorized users, sudden online banking setup, repeated small withdrawals, notarized documents signed during medical stress, changes to mailing addresses, and any power of attorney created without independent counsel. And Nat, she said, her voice softer, if he's rushing a house transfer, assume there's debt behind it. The next day, I drove my mother to her cardiology appointment. David tried to stop me. I already handle that, he said. Not today, I replied. In the waiting room, my mother clutched her purse with both hands. Your brother said you'd be angry if you knew how sick I was. I felt my throat tighten. I'm angry because I didn't know. She started crying quietly, and between broken breaths, she admitted David had taken her to a notary 3 months earlier after a dizzy spell. He told her it was just emergency paperwork, so he could talk to doctors and pay bills. She had signed because he kept saying Natalie is too far away. Dad gets confused. I'm the only one here. After the appointment, while Mom rested, I asked her permission to review her medical portal and financial files. She hesitated, then nodded. What I found made my hand shake. David had changed the contact email on 2 accounts to his own. He had set up automatic transfers labeled care expenses. But several deposits landed in an investment app, not a pharmacy or insurance portal. There were withdrawals under amounts that would trigger extra verification. And then I found the scanned power of attorney. At first glance, it looked legitimate. Then I saw my mother's signature. The E in Elaine curled the wrong direction. My mother had written her name the same way for my entire life, with a long underline under the final letter. This signature had no underline. Worse, the notary date matched a day my mother had been under observation at the clinic for 6 hours. I pulled up the patient discharge record. She could not have been across town signing legal documents at 2:15 p.m. because a nurse had recorded her blood pressure at 2:12. I sat there in my childhood bedroom with my laptop open and felt grief turn into something harder. My own brother had not simply pressured our parents. He had built a trap around them. One sympathetic errand at a time. I stared at the fake signature and thought, how cold does someone's blood have to become before they can forge their own mother's name? The next morning, I drove to Burlington and met James Callahan, my cousin on my mother's side, who also happened to be a real estate attorney. I brought copies, timelines, screenshots, medical records, and banking summaries. James read everything, without interrupting. When he finally looked up, his face had changed. Natalie, this isn't a family disagreement, he said. This is potential fraud, elder financial exploitation, and attempted unlawful transfer of property. I felt sick. Can we stop it? He tapped the power of attorney. Yes, but we need him to reveal intent. People like David hide behind caregiving language. We need witnesses, documents, and one controlled conversation where he thinks he's still winning. That was when I stopped feeling like a daughter begging to be believed. I became the investigator in my own family's wreckage, and I knew exactly where the black box was. Natalie confronts her parents, and David attacks her credibility. I waited until my parents were alone. Not because I was afraid of David, but because I knew how he operated. He didn't argue facts. He flooded the room with emotion until everyone forgot the question. So, I chose a quiet afternoon, made tea the way my mother liked it, and placed 3 folders on the kitchen table. My father looked at them and immediately went pale. My mother touched the edge of one folder, as though it might burn her. "What is this?" she whispered. "The truth," I said. "And I need you both to hear me before you decide whether to believe me." My father's first instinct was still denial. "Natalie, your brother has made mistakes, but he has been under pressure." "Pressure doesn't forge signatures," I said. My mother flinched. I opened the first folder and showed the banking timeline. These transfers were labeled as care expenses, but they went to an investment platform and a private lender. Not prescriptions, not utilities, not medical bills. My father leaned closer, his reading glasses trembling in his hand. "That can't be right." I opened the second folder. "This is the power of attorney David used to access accounts." "Mom, look at the signature." My mother stared at it for a long moment, then covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. "That isn't mine." My father turned to her. "Elaine." She began to sob. "I signed something at the kitchen counter, but not this. Not this page. He said it was for emergencies. He said Natalie was too busy and you were too tired, and someone had to be practical." I wanted to comfort her, but I needed them to see all of it before David's voice entered the room. "There's more." I said the notary timestamp says Mom signed this across town while she was still at the clinic. Here is the clinic record. The timing makes the document impossible. My father stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "He told me you were exaggerating." His voice broke on the last word. My mother wiped her eyes. "He said you hated him for staying. He said you'd come home and try to punish him." That was when the front door opened. I hadn't told David to come. He had a habit of checking on the house whenever he sensed control slipping, and I had counted on that. He walked into the kitchen with snow on his boots and stopped when he saw the folders. For 1 second, fear flashed across his face. Then he became the wounded son. "Wow," he said slowly. "So, this is what we're doing now? Secret meetings?" "Sit down," my father said. David ignored him and looked at my mother. "Mom, you know what she's doing, right? She's trying to scare you. She deals with disasters for a living. She sees danger everywhere." That job messed with her head. The room went still. My mother looked confused, and David pushed harder. "Natalie has always needed control. She flies in from Seattle, acts like a hero, and suddenly everyone is a criminal. Did she tell you she was put on leave after that investigation in Phoenix?" I stared at him. He had twisted something real. I had taken mandatory trauma leave after investigating a fatal cargo crash. It wasn't shameful. It was human. But he said it like a diagnosis. "You're using my grief from a plane crash to distract from forged documents," I said. David laughed without humor. "Listen to her. Forged documents, financial abuse, big courtroom words. She wants you to think I'm some villain because I'm the one who stayed when she ran." My mother began breathing too fast. Her hand went to her chest. My father rushed to her side. "Elaine, breathe." David took a step toward her, but I blocked him. "Don't," I said. "You do not get to create the panic and then pretend to be the cure." His eyes went flat. "Move. No." My mother's face had gone white, but she lifted one shaking hand. "David," she whispered, "did you tell Natalie not to be contacted about my appointments?" He didn't answer. My father looked at him. "Did you?" David's silence said more than any confession could. My mother began crying again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was recognition. "You made me think my daughter didn't care." David's jaw tightened. I did what I had to do. The kitchen seemed to shrink around us. For the first time, my parents were not looking at me like I was causing a storm. They were looking at David like they finally saw who had been standing in the rain with a match. David threatens the family, and Natalie takes control. David's mask didn't fall all at once. It peeled away in strips. First came the injured voice. "I sacrificed everything for this family." Then the accusation. Natalie gets applause for leaving, and I get interrogated for staying. Then when no one rushed to comfort him, the threat, he looked at my father and said, "You need to think very carefully before you let her ruin this. If that house transfer gets stopped, you won't just lose me. You might lose the house, too." My father blinked. "What does that mean?" David's mouth twitched. He had said too much, but pride pushed him forward. "It means bills don't pay themselves. It means your perfect daughter doesn't know what it costs to keep this place going." I opened the third folder. "Actually, I do." I placed a printout on the table. "This is the home equity reserve notice. Failed transfer. Insufficient funds. David, you used Mom and Dad's house as a backup source for your investment account, didn't you?" My mother gasped. My father gripped the back of his chair. "Answer her," he said. David pointed at me. "You had no right digging through my life." I dug through accounts connected to our parents' home. "Because you want the money." "No," I said, "because you already spent it." His face flushed. "You think you're so smart?" I reached into my pocket and turned on a recording from the previous night. In it, David's voice came through clearly from the garage, angry and desperate. "I just need 10 more days. Once the deed is in my name, I can refinance or sell. My parents don't understand numbers, and my sister won't be here long enough to stop it." My mother made a sound I will never forget. Not a sob, not a scream, but something like a person breaking quietly from the inside. David lunged toward my phone. I stepped back. My father moved between us. "Don't you touch her." David laughed. But there was panic in it now. "You're all insane. That recording is illegal. Vermont allows one-party consent," I said. "And I was standing in the garage doorway when you said it." His eyes narrowed. "You set me up." "No, irrefutable." I listened. He turned on my parents. "Fine. You want honesty? I made one bad investment. One. Then the market turned. Then the lender started calling. I was going to fix it. The house was the only asset big enough to buy time." "Buy time?" My father whispered. With our home, David slammed his fist on the table. It was going to be mine anyway. I earned it. My mother recoiled. We never agreed to give it to you like that. Because you're weak. He snapped. Both of you let guilt make decisions. The room went silent. He had crossed a line even he couldn't uncross. I looked at my parents and spoke calmly because calm was the one thing David couldn't control. We need a full family meeting tomorrow, not just us, Aunt Linda, Uncle Paul, James, and anyone David told about this house transfer. He made the announcement publicly. The correction should be public, too. David gave me a slow, ugly smile. Bring whoever you want. You'll regret humiliating me. I met his stare.
No, David.
I think you're confusing humiliation with accountability. He grabbed his coat, knocked over a chair, and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back and said, "If I go down, I'll make sure Mom and Dad have nothing left to save." Then he walked out into the snow. My mother shook so badly, I wrapped both arms around her. My father stood in the kitchen looking 10 years older. But for the first time since Christmas dinner, no one asked me to be quiet. No one asked me to protect David's feelings. The family meeting was set, and David still didn't know James was already preparing the trap. The family meeting, and the truth explodes. The next evening, the dining room looked almost identical to Christmas night, but the feeling was completely different. The same table, the same chandelier, the same relatives who had cheered when David announced he was getting the house. But this time, there was no turkey, no music, no performance of warmth. There were folders at every seat. James Callahan sat beside me in a navy suit, not as a surprised cousin wandering into chaos, but as the attorney I had quietly asked to witness everything. David noticed him immediately. "Why is he here?" he demanded. James folded his hands. "Because your mother asked me to review documents concerning her property." That was not technically a lie. After the kitchen confrontation, my mother had signed a written request for James to examine everything. David looked at her as if she had betrayed him.
Mom.
She did not look away this time. "I want answers." My father stood at the head of the table, the place David had claimed 2 nights earlier. His voice was rough. "Before anyone speaks, I need to say something. At Christmas, many of you congratulated David because you believed Elaine and I had freely decided to transfer the house. We had not." Murmurs broke out. Aunt Linda looked stunned. Uncle Paul frowned at David. David rolled his eyes. "Here we go." James opened the first folder. The power of attorney David used contains a signature Elaine says is not hers. The timestamp conflicts with medical records proving she was at a clinic during the alleged signing. There are also account transfers routed to investment platforms and private debt payments. David stood. "This is defamation." James didn't flinch. "Sit down, David." Something about James's tone made him sit. I watched my brother's hands curl into fists on the table. The room had turned against the rhythm he knew. Usually he could raise his voice, and everyone would soften. This time each shout made the evidence look worse. James continued. "There is another issue. A preliminary deed transfer packet was submitted to a title office 3 weeks ago. It was rejected because it lacked one required notarized acknowledgement. The cover email came from David's account." My father whispered, "You already tried to transfer the house?" My mother covered her mouth. David's face went blank. That was the twist he hadn't known we had. James slid a printed email across the table. The email says, and I quote, "My parents are medically fragile, so I need this completed before my sister interferes." Aunt Linda looked at David with disgust. "You wrote that?" David's control snapped. "Yes, I wrote it because she does interfere."
He pointed at me.
"She has interfered my whole life. Perfect Natalie. Brave Natalie. Flying around the country solving tragedies while I'm stuck here shoveling snow and fixing toilets. Do you know what it's like being the son who stayed and still hearing about the daughter who left?" I stared at him, and for a second I saw the real wound beneath the greed. Jealousy. Years of it. But pain does not excuse theft. "You could have told me you were drowning," I said. "You chose to forge Mom's name instead." He laughed bitterly. "Because you would have loved that. You would have loved seeing me fail." "No," I said, "I would have helped you before you started hurting them." My mother reached for my father's hand. David saw it and exploded. Oh, please don't act like victims.
You all used me.
You needed rides, repairs, appointments, errands. I gave you my life. My father's voice shook. We loved you. Love doesn't pay debt. David shouted, I needed that house. I deserve something. James leaned forward. Did you intend to sell the property after transfer? David froze. Answer carefully, James said. There are emails with the developer in Stowe. The room erupted. My mother stood so fast her chair tipped back.
You were going to sell my home.
David's face twisted.
It's a house, Mom.
Wood, walls, land. You act like it's sacred because you're scared of change. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Your father built the nursery with his own hands. And what did that get us? David screamed. A museum for Natalie's childhood. Then he turned to me, and the ugliest sentence of my life came out of his mouth. You were a burden from the day you were born. Everything became about you. Your asthma, your scholarships, your career, your little awards. I was invisible until I found a way to take what should have been mine. No one breathed. My father looked like he had been struck. My mother's tears stopped completely, as if pain had turned to ice. I felt the words enter me, but they did not destroy me. Maybe because by then I finally understood that David's cruelty was not truth. It was confession. Thank you, I said quietly. David blinked. For what? For saying out loud what this was really about. James closed the folder. Robert Elaine, based on what we have, you can revoke the power of attorney immediately, freeze access to affected accounts, notify the title office, and file a police report. I recommend doing all 4 tonight. David shoved back his chair. You wouldn't dare. My mother looked at him, and her voice was small but steady. I already signed the revocation. David stared at her.
Mom.
She shook her head. No, you don't get to use that word right now. My father walked to the fireplace mantel, took down the brass house ornament, and held it in his palm. This house was never payment for whoever made the most noise. It was supposed to be a safe place. You made it unsafe. David's eyes darted around the room, searching for one person to rescue him. No one did. The relatives who had cheered 2 nights earlier sat silent, ashamed. Aunt Linda finally said, David, you need to leave. He looked at me with pure hatred. You think you won? I didn't smile. No, I think Mom and Dad survived you. He stormed out, but this time the door closing didn't feel like a threat. It sounded like a lock turning for me inside. David pays the price, and Natalie learns what family really means. The aftermath did not feel victorious at first. That is the part revenge stories do not always show. When the villain is your own brother, justice still leaves an empty chair at the table. My parents revoked every document David had touched. James filed notices with the county recorder and the title office, blocking any transfer without direct verification from both owners. The bank froze the compromised accounts. My mother gave a statement about the false signature. My father gave one about the threats. The police report became real. Not family gossip, not drama, a case number. David called 23 times the first night. Then he sent messages. First rage, then blame, then panic. He said we were ruining him. He said he had only needed time. He said Mom's heart couldn't handle a scandal, as if he had not built the scandal with his own hands. 3 days later, his employer, a regional property management company, suspended him after learning he had used work contacts to approach a developer about my parents' home. A week after that, the private lender filed against him. The investment account he had bragged about was nearly empty. The debt was not. His friends stopped returning calls when they realized he had borrowed from 2 of them using the same story. Once the house transfer goes through, I'll pay you back by New Year's. David was not the good son who stayed. He was the man who tried to sell his parents' roof, while smiling over Christmas dinner. He came to the house once more, unshaven, reedied, carrying no arrogance at all. My father opened the door, but left the chain on. David saw me standing behind him, and immediately dropped to his knees on the porch. Please, he said. I messed up. I know I messed up. Don't let them charge me. I'll lose everything. My mother stood beside me wrapped in a blue sweater, one hand resting over her heart. She looked at him with a grief, I cannot describe. You didn't lose everything, she said. You gambled what was never yours. David cried then. Maybe from shame, maybe from fear, maybe because consequences finally had a face. I'm your son, he whispered. My father's eyes filled with tears. Then you should have protected your mother. For a moment, I thought he might open the door. He didn't. He said, get help. Get a lawyer. Do not come back until we are ready to speak to you. David looked at me. Natalie, please. Years earlier, I might have softened. I might have carried the guilt for everyone. I might have mistaken peacekeeping for love. But standing there, I understood something that changed me forever. Forgiveness does not mean handing the knife back to the person who stabbed you. I hope you become better than this, I said. But you don't get access to them while you're still dangerous. He stared at me like he wanted to hate me, but he had no audience left for the performance. My father closed the door. My mother broke down after that, and we held her on the hallway floor beside the Christmas boxes. It was not a perfect ending. Families do not heal in one dramatic scene. My parents had to rebuild passwords, accounts, medical contacts, and trust in their own judgment. I extended my leave from work and stayed through January. I drove Mom to appointments. I sat with Dad while he reviewed every bill. I also apologized for the years I had let distance become silence. My career mattered, but so did calling before emergencies forced me home. The house was placed into a protected trust with clear instructions. Neither child could pressure, borrow against sell, or transfer it while my parents were alive. After their passing, the property would not become a prize. It would be handled transparently, with independent legal oversight. That decision gave my parents peace. It gave me peace, too. As for David, the legal process moved forward. He avoided prison at first by agreeing to restitution, fraud counseling, debt disclosure, and a strict no-contact order, except through attorneys. But his life still collapsed in the way dishonest lives eventually do.
He lost his job.
He declared bankruptcy. The relatives who once praised him stopped inviting him to dinners. Not because we demanded it, but because truth has a way of changing the seating chart. Months later, my mother rehung the brass house ornament, even though Christmas was long over. She placed it in the kitchen window, where sunlight could hit it. Your father and I used to tell you this house belonged to the people who loved it, she said. I think we forgot that love has to include honesty. I nodded. I had once believed blood was permanent, that family meant automatic loyalty, automatic forgiveness, automatic access to the deepest parts of your life. But David taught me a painful lesson. Blood can explain a connection, but it cannot excuse betrayal. Real family is not the person who shouts, I stayed while stealing your parents' security. Real family is the person willing to stand in the uncomfortable truth even if everyone calls them dramatic at first. Protecting your parents from manipulation is not disrespect. It is love with a backbone. Greed does not just take money. It takes memories, trust, safety, and the right to feel at home. And when greed wears a familiar face, you have to be brave enough to name it anyway. I used to think blood meant forever. But now I know family is not proven by who shares your last name. Family is proven by who stays honest when everything starts falling apart. So tell me, what would you do if your own brother or sister betrayed your parents for money? Would you expose them, forgive them, or walk away? Comment below, because I truly want to.